Welcome to the Tuesday Weekend, the podcast that has had their phone on silent since 2007. I am Josh Hobson. That is my co-host, Nick Parkin. Nick, anything crazy happened this past weekend?
Just hang on a second.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, today we are looking at our phones. Perhaps you are looking at your phone as you watch this right now. Hopefully you're not at work flying an airplane or in surgery right now. As you know, most of our viewers are surgeons and airline pilots. So wash your hands, get back to work. We are going to look at the phone's role in several perspectives today. Why it slows every aspect of dining, why you're being a bad teammate if you spend a lot of time on your phone at work, and what it is like when the phone doesn't stop ringing. But we will start with the informal study that occurred in 2014 because it is just legend in the restaurant world. There was a restaurant owner in New York who had noticed that his year after year revenue was down, and it seemed like people were just taking longer to dine. So he went back to review his camera footage from 2004 and compared it to 2014, and his findings were startling. In 2004, customers took an average of 8 minutes before ordering. In 2014, that was 21 minutes. In 2004, it took an average of 6 minutes for food to get to the table. Out of 45 guests, 2 sent their meals back. In 2014, it still was about 6 minutes for the food to reach the table, but now 9 sent it back to get reheated because 26 of the customers spent an average of 3 minutes taking pictures of their food, while 14 were taking pictures of each other. Overall, in 2004, the average diner spent an hour and 5 minutes in the restaurant. In 2014, it was up to an hour 55. When your profitability depends on your ability to turn a table, that 50 minutes is basically another table you are missing out on. And I mean, really, since a decade has passed since 2014, I would love to see how 2024 compares. But before we get into exactly why it takes so much longer, Nick, your reaction to all this so far?
I've heard this, and I heard this back in 2014, and it's absolutely true. And when you say that 50 minutes is the turn of like a table, that's not the turn of a table. That's the turn of your entire 14 tables,
exactly.
or 20 table, or 40 table.
Turn of every table in the dining room. Correct.
We're talking several $1,000s because you've got to get the right light on your appetizer.
Yes.
And you watch people on the other side like, stop
exactly.
it.
No, people taking pictures of their food as if they are trying to create a commercial for that plate. You know, the full Ann Getty's like swaddling the plate setup. It's ridiculous.
Hey, I take pictures of my food too, and it's just like, oh, cool, click, and then I eat.
Absolutely. I will right here admit that a good 70% of the text chain between me, Nick, Glenn, and another friend is pictures of pizza or sushi.
Or beer.
Or beer.
There's always drinks around.
It is food or beverage. Occasionally they'll get one of my landscape pics, but it is mostly food and beverage. But we also take the picture. That one doesn't come out well. Take it again. Move on with your life. Eat it before it gets cold.
I don't even check if it comes out good or not. I just take one. If it's bad, it's like, it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. You are going to eat over 1,000 meals this year.
I'm going to start taking pictures of my tuna fish sandwiches. I'm going to take pictures of my breakfast cereal.
Oh, yeah.
No one takes pictures of that shit.
I totally did not take a picture of the yogurt, peach, and granola that I had made this morning.
And I should have taken pictures of the pancakes with the blueberry syrup and the lemon butter and the 3 pieces of bacon next to it I had for breakfast yesterday. I totally missed that opportunity. Silly me.
Before we get back to photos, before I forget about it, one other thing that does slow servers down that did not exist in 2004 is asking for the Wi-Fi.
Yep.
Because even if it just takes 20 seconds for that exchange, that is 20 seconds multiplied by every table that the server has.
It's 20 seconds for me to tell you what the Wi-Fi is, and then it's anywhere from 20 seconds to 10 minutes for you to figure out how to put it in your phone.
Exactly. Let's focus first on the fact that placing your order went from 8 minutes to 21 minutes. And now, sure, I will recognize there, even before phones were in all of our pockets, there were absolutely those people that come in and chat and catch up, and the menu sitting there flat on the table hasn't even been opened. I've been there. I've been that person. It happens, but
that's a one-off. That's one out of
one-off.
one of your tables that night did that. Not every table did that.
Exactly.
I got a little history here about the phone thing. So we're talking about these, in case anyone is watching, smartphones. What a lot of people don't realize is back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when cell phones first came out. Now, you couldn't talk, you couldn't look at stuff, you couldn't, there was no YouTube on there yet. Stuff just didn't exist. People were now bringing their phones to dinners and lunches, especially lunches, and talking on them.
Yes.
I had one instance where I could not get a guest to get off his phone so I could take his order. So I asked his table mate, what's his number? And pulled my phone out and called him at the table. He's like, hang on, I got another call coming. I'm like, can I take your order yet? And he's like, give me 1 second. I'm like, fine. He's like, yeah, go for Gary. And I'm like, hey, Gary, this is Nick, your server. Can I take your order? The rest of the table's order. And he just looked at me and I'm like, order. And everyone at the table's like, dude, order your food. We're on a lunch break. We don't have all day. It already had started before then. And then when there was actually stuff to watch.
Actually, that kind of brings me to a question I was going to ask is, which is worse, the younger crowd whose nose is just magnetically attracted to the phone screen, or the older generations who think nothing of just holding a loud personal conversation on their phone in the middle of the dining room?
I think this is a little bit unfair because while the younger generation is constantly on their phones, people my age are also constantly on their phones.
It's both.
It is both. But I mean, the loud conversations can be actually rather entertaining.
Oh, sometimes, yes.
Yeah, sometimes you're just like every table, like, no, I want to hear what happened there. Don't tell them to stop.
I wish I could remember them all, but just the number of times I have walked past a conversation, gone into the kitchen, and said, guys, I just heard out of context this fabulous sentence.
Yeah, that's a big bartender thing because you hear everything.
Yes, you do.
Because the people don't understand bottles reflect sound. So if you're 20 feet away talking about maybe something you shouldn't be talking about in public, and you see the bartender making a drink and their head suddenly goes and look that way and then just go back to their drink. Yeah, we heard you.
And it's crazy for the number of times that my wife will say I didn't hear her when she said something that, I could be a good 6-7 paces away from you and you muttering something, I will pick that up.
Yeah.
I'll hear it. Absolutely. But anyway, back to the phones. So because clearly before you are ordering, that slowdown isn't because you are taking a picture of the menu. All right, sometimes, but you're not taking a picture of the place setting. It's because you are not doing the one task that you as a guest have to do for everything else to get done, and that is place your order. Because nothing else can happen on that chain until we know what you want.
And one of the biggest ironies of people constantly on their phones, I'm going to keep holding my phone up because this is how often I see them when I'm working one person, is they complain incessantly when there's not a paper menu and they have to use a code to read the menu on their phone. I mean, and they are vehemently angry. Well, don't you have a menu? And it's like, man, just click your phone on there and you'll have it right. I don't want to read it on my phone. I'm like, you have been on your phone for 20 minutes.
There was one night at the steakhouse where this guy had asked me not to bother him or take his order until he was done with his phone call, which lasted another 45 minutes. Like, why the hell are you in my dining room right now? Like, there's no place for this phone call that is so urgent it cannot be disturbed.
I had a table out on Coronado, and they're at the best table in the restaurant. It's a second-story view of the water, the boats, and everything. And this guy he's a plumber. He's on his phone talking, and I walk up to his wife. I'm like, do you want drinks? And she's like, he wants this. And I'm like, okay. And I come back, and I'm standing there for a minute, and he's just talking on his phone in business. So I just walk away. I mean, there's nothing I can do. He's not even acknowledging me. His wife's kind of going like, I'm sorry. And then I go behind the bar, and about 10 minutes later, my manager's like, hey, don't go back to that table. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, the guy's really mad that everybody else has placed their order and has food and they don't. And I'm like, he's been on a phone call for the last 40 minutes. He hasn't even acknowledged my presence. The only reason he has a drink is because his wife ordered it, and she had to order over him talking on the phone. He told her to quiet down so he could hear the phone.
Dang.
I'm like, I have no problem whatsoever never going to that table again. Have fun with him. And my manager's like, oh. And I'm like, see, he's on the phone again. Go see if you can help him. And she came back. She's like, yeah, he just flat out ignores you. And I'm like, yeah, it's irritating. People don't understand that we are kind of on a time frame. you're here for happy hour. That could end while you're on the phone. And when it ends, it just ends. It's not like, well, I was here. And it's like, yeah, man. And then you had a 40-minute phone call and it ended 10 minutes ago.
Exactly. You're not
Yeah, I missed it.
grandfathered in to
Yeah.
happy hour. I think here, let's take our first break. And when we get back, let's talk about servers with phones in their hands on the floor. So we'll be right back.